I've just had my cholesterol tested, and according to the standard cholesterol test, I've got a problem. My total cholesterol is 5.74. It's high. My LDL cholesterol is 4.0, and that's high as well. And my cholesterol to HDL ratio is 4.8, which is also above the laboratory's recommended range. So if we stop there, you might reasonably conclude that my cholesterol profile doesn't look particularly good. But I didn't stop there, because I also measured ApoB, lipoprotein A, triglycerides, and ApoA1. And once you look at all of those numbers together, something very interesting happens. The picture becomes considerably more complicated than simply your LDL cholesterol is high and you have something to worry about. But I'm also going to utilise what many of these profiles routinely fail to do. I'm going to individualise my lifestyle habits to better explain my numbers. So about me. My body weight is good, with a waist to height ratio in the healthy range, so I have little, if any, visceral fat. My blood pressure is normal. I exercise using resistance training and some zone 2 3 or 4 times a week. I drink moderate amounts of alcohol 2 or 3 times a week and have sugary snacks once a day or once every other day. And I have a low carb diet, although I'm never in ketosis, and my dietary fibre intake is very high, as I bulk my dinner plate up with numerous vegetables and salads every single day. And of course, I don't smoke or vape. I therefore consider myself metabolically healthy, with no low-grade inflammation and no sign of insulin resistance. And all this information is absolutely vital to get a proper understanding of my lipid profile, because traditional cardiovascular risk assessments frequently misinterpret lipid markers when applied to unique dietary and physiological states, as we all have. I'll deconstruct my specific, highly unique biomarker pattern: low triglycerides, very low lipoprotein A, an optimal apolipoprotein A1, ApoA1, a level of 1.55 grams per litre, a slightly elevated apolipoprotein B or ApoB, and a highly protective ApoB-ApoA1 ratio of 0.75. By evaluating how these specific markers intersect with my personal habits, this video demonstrates that my isolated elevation in ApoB reflects a non-pathological state of highly efficient lipid trafficking. When contextualized alongside my normal body weight, non-smoking status and normal blood pressure and so on, my complete panel indicates low overall cardiovascular risk. Not quite the beginning we thought. Let's run through the individual markers and explain them in detail. First up, let's look at my total cholesterol score of 5.74. I've got the American figures in brackets just next to that as well, for any of you North Americans watching. The 5.74, this is flagged red, yet in 2018, the American Heart Association guidelines said, and I quote, "Total cholesterol is not associated significantly with heart disease." So simply, I'm going to ignore that number. Next up is my low triglyceride score. The first thing to say is that this is a sign of insulin sensitivity, which is great. Triglycerides are the primary fat molecules used for energy storage in your bloodstream. In a sedentary population, consuming a high carbohydrate diet, elevated triglycerides signal metabolic dysfunction, insulin resistance, and an overproduction of fat by the liver. My low triglycerides indicate that my metabolic clearance pathways are functioning exceptionally well. Because my diet is low in carbohydrates, my skeletal muscles and tissues rely heavily on fat for daily fuel. My body therefore produces highly active enzymes that rapidly strip triglycerides from VLDLs to burn them as energy. The fact that my triglycerides are low is definitive proof of high insulin sensitivity and rapid systemic energy utilization. Now let's look at my very low lipoprotein A. This is my inherited genetic shield and probably the most important figure on this test. Lipoprotein A, or LPA, is an aggressive, genetically determined variant of an LDL particle that possesses an extra sticky protein. This structure allows it to bind to arterial walls, accelerate plaque formation, and encourage blood clotting, making it a powerful, independent driver of early cardiovascular disease. Crucially, my circulating concentration of LPA is entirely predetermined by my genes and remains stable throughout life, independent of diet or training. Therefore, it only needs testing once. My very low LPA of just above 9, with anything below 75 considered good, means I have inherited a protective genetic architecture. By eliminating this highly dangerous, unprovoked risk factor, the clinical interpretation of my other circulating lipid particles changes completely. And this is borne out by my family history of parents, uncles, aunties, all in their 70s, 80s and 90s. No one in my wider family, and I've got a big family, have ever suffered from heart disease or died from heart disease. My ApoB of 1.17 is within the lab's range, but I don't like this range. In real terms, it's slightly elevated, as it should really be below 80. But this is expected when we look at my lifestyle factors, and let me explain. The primary paradox in my results is my slightly elevated ApoB coexisting with ideal fitness. Every single plaque-forming particle, whether it's an LDL, a VLDL or IDL particle, carries exactly one molecule of the ApoB protein on its surface. Therefore, ApoB serves as a direct count of your total circulating particle number rather than just the weight of cholesterol inside them. My body is actually exhibiting what's known as the lean mass response mechanism. My elevated particle count is a direct consequence of my low carbohydrate lifestyle. Because my body lacks a steady stream of incoming carbohydrates, my liver must continuously package and distribute fat-based fuel to my muscles. It does this by pumping out transport vehicles. Once my highly fit muscles successfully empty the triglyceride cargo from these vehicles to burn for energy, the remaining depleted empty shells, actually LDL particles, stay in circulation longer. This state is common in lean, active people on restricted carbohydrate diets. My elevated ApoB does not indicate a failure to clear fat. It simply reflects a high volume of active energy transport vehicles moving through a highly efficient metabolic system. Next up is my high ApoA1. This level of 1.55 grams per litre is an excellent clinical finding that sits securely in the upper optimal tier for adult reference ranges. ApoA1 is the primary structural protein found on HDL, or good cholesterol. These particles function as a vascular cleanup crew. They pull excess or oxidized cholesterol out of the arterial walls and transport it back to the liver to be safely broken down and excreted. A robust ApoA1 reading of 1.55 indicates that my body possesses an abundant, highly active system designed to police my arteries and prevent lipid accumulation. Now let's intersect my lifestyle with my biochemistry. First off, this is unique to me, which is why we have to approach these lipid results with an expert eye about ourselves. This is of course what this channel is all about. In my case, my unique combination of daily habits directly shapes this specific lipid architecture. First up is my high fitness and low carb synergy. My dedicated fitness routine and low carbohydrate intake act as a dual engine. My physical activity demands a constant supply of energy, keeping my triglycerides low as they are consumed almost immediately. Simultaneously, regular exercise is one of the few natural mechanisms known to stimulate the liver to produce more ApoA1, expanding my protective HDL pool. And what about my moderate alcohol consumption? Well, drinking alcohol 2 or 3 times a week exerts a well-documented biochemical effect on your liver. Moderate alcohol intake is a known metabolic stimulant for hepatic ApoA1 production. This specific pathway has directly contributed to pushing up my ApoA1 level to its optimal 1.55. So drinking alcohol turns out to be healthy, right? Well, it might just explain the J-curve, a phenomenon which I'll address in a future video, but understand this. All the heart associations from across Europe and America say the same thing, that evidence is clear. No one should start drinking alcohol or increase their intake purely to improve a lipid panel. However, if you already enjoy a moderate and stable routine, as I do, my body's response demonstrates that my healthy habits successfully keep my cardiovascular system in a highly resilient, low-risk state. And my small-scale sugar indulgences, well, sugar typically raises triglycerides, and my habit of consuming sugary snacks in very small quantities prevents metabolic damage. Because I'm highly fit and maintain a normal body weight, my muscle glycogen stores are consistently emptied by my active lifestyle. When I eat a tiny amount of sugar, my muscles absorb that glucose instantly to store it as energy. This fast, localized clearance prevents the sugar from reaching my liver, ensuring my triglycerides remain low. And now let's look at a really important blood measure, my ApoB ApoA1 ratio of 0.75. In order to accurately calculate true cardiovascular risk, preventative cardiologists look at the direct balance between the delivery vehicles, ApoB, and the cleanup vehicles, ApoA1. With me, my calculated ApoB ApoA1 ratio stands at 0.75. In modern lipidology, a ratio below 0.8 for men and around or below 0.75 for women is considered highly optimal, indicating low cardiovascular risk. This metric proves that my slightly elevated ApoB is completely counterbalanced by my high 1.55 grams per litre ApoA1 infrastructure. Statistically, my vascular cleanup crew is entirely sufficient to manage and clear the delivery particles circulating due to my low carbohydrate diet. But what about small dense LDL? In my previous video linked below in the description, it was these molecules that were the main driver of atherosclerosis, and they don't appear on this blood test. Now, full disclosure, I did the blood test a week before I did my research for the previous LDL video, but all is not lost thanks to decades of research that allows us to mathematically assess the levels of small dense LDL particles in our blood test. According to ResearchGate, who have spent years collating numerous studies that have all confirmed what I'm about to do as being accurate. Take my LDL result in milligrams per deciliter, which is the North American measurement of 155, and my ApoB of 117. Divide the two and you get an answer of 1.32. According to the UK Biobank, Women's Health Study and the Framingham Heart Study, over 330,000 participants were tracked, and the trials confirmed that a low ratio accurately identifies individuals carrying an elevated burden of small dense LDL particles. This low number is below 1.2. And you can see from the table, you'll see I can therefore state that my small dense particles being well above 1.2 is within the healthy range. So let's conclude all of that. My biomarker profile is a textbook example of a healthy metabolic adaptation to an active low carbohydrate lifestyle. My LDL markers are not irrelevant, but looked at in context, and that is what this video has been doing. They become explained as nothing to worry about in view of the other markers and my lifestyle. My slightly elevated ApoB is an expected byproduct of fuel transport in a lean body and it is entirely neutralised by my genetically low LPA, low triglycerides, high ApoA1 and an optimal ApoB ApoA1 ratio of 0.75. Supported by my normal body weight, normal blood pressure and non-smoking status, my overall cardiovascular risk profile remains excellent. And finally, my levels of the super important small dense LDL particles is confirmed as low also. I guess if I wanted to be 100% sure, I would undertake a coronary artery calcium score, a type of CT scan, just to be sure. I may well do this test in future, but for now I'm satisfied I'm doing all I can, looking at everything measured and taking into account context. I'm actually very content with the blood results you see here. See you next time.